This is the purple Cherokee. It's actually could use a little bit more ripening maybe. And this is what we are going to be talking about today. And these guys way up here. Alright guys, so I'm out here, I'm trying to pick some of my tomatoes, and this one actually could have maybe stayed on there a little bit longer, but these purple Cherokee tomatoes, I'll show you some more pictures of these. They are just the most wonderfully ugly, best tasting tomato ever, and I have all of these ginormous sunflowers. They are genuinely over 15 feet tall, like for a reference, let's see here. For a reference, if you can see where let's see if we can show you well, I don't know if you can really see one or not, but I have teepees here. They're right about there. Those are, I think, 7-foot teepees, and you can tell how much taller these are than those teepees. So, they're about 14 feet tall. So, what do Cherokee purple tomatoes and giant sunflowers have to even do with each other? So I'm just going to share this. It's going to be a really quick video. I'm out here just picking these tomatoes, and I'm going to be saving some sunflower seeds. Purple Cherokee tomatoes, I grow these every single year since I've, as an adult, grown my own garden, in honor of my grandfather. Every year, he always grew, not in his later years, but for the majority of his life, he always grew a really beautiful garden, and one of his favorite things to grow were purple Cherokee tomatoes, and part of that being because Cherokee heritage. And funny, strange fact would be that he grew these long before they were actually a name. So we don't actually live very far at all from the Cherokee National Forest, and the purple Cherokee tomato, as we know it, came into the spotlight in, like, I don't know, in the 1990s, maybe, something of that nature. Maybe even after that. They've not been around officially in the heirloom circles for that long, as in seed companies and seed saving places selling this variety. However, long before that, my grandfather was always growing purple Cherokee tomatoes, and that's what we always knew them by, long before they were ever sold officially through heirloom, and before they actually had heirloom status. The story behind them is that a man from, I believe, Sevier County, Sevierville, many of y'all know good old Dolly Parton from her hometown, submitted seeds for the purple Cherokee tomato to a seed saving exchange under the name the purple Cherokee tomato. Long before that, my grandpa, he was already growing these. So every year I grow these just in honor of him. Since then he's passed, and here in a second I'll put a little picture up. I actually live right next door to the last church that he pastored as an old-time Methodist preacher, so that's special too. So it's extra special growing these tomatoes right next to his church this year. Those big sunflowers back there, I grow those every year in honor of my husband's grandmother, who grew amazing, million times more wonderful than any sunflower I've ever grown. She grew them every year. They brought her lots of joy, and I just grow these in honor of them. And so while I'm picking these tomatoes and I'm going to save these seeds, it gives me time to reflect on them, the legacy they left behind, and it leaves me with a question I'm going to ask you. Okay guys, so that question is, we're all leaving, these bees are driving me crazy, we're all leaving a legacy every single day, and all those little things that we do, we're leaving a legacy behind. We're leaving very many memories in the hearts of the people around us, the ones that we love the most. You know, Jesse's grandma, I think she'd find it funny if she knew that we grew sunflowers just in honor of her. Like, I think that she'd find that humorous. That when we see big sunflowers, we think of his grandma. I think my papa would find it very funny that that I am out here growing a tomato next to his old church, and thinking of him when I harvest those. I think that he would just get a kick out of that. And it's like the little things. And you know, a lot of times we can get really caught up on thinking that it's all these big things. Man, this bee loves me. Thinking that it's all of the big things in life that we do that people are going to remember. Sometimes it's just not true. Sometimes it's those little things, the things that we have no idea in the moment that that's going to be what somebody's going to remember you for. We're all leaving a legacy, and we're all leaving memories behind every day. My question for you is, what are people going to remember? What are they going to remember you for? I want to remind you guys to be living a life that's worth remembering and that's worth honoring. And I want to encourage you, if you've never grown something in honor of someone or in memory of someone, it's a pretty cool thing to do. Maybe you want to add that to your list of things to do in your garden. Maybe if you come from people who were gardeners or something of that nature. So in honor of them, these are for them, and I would encourage you to grow something in honor of someone you love as well. Okay guys, I'm going to share one last thing with you, and that is this. This is my great grandmother's egg collecting basket. It came out of our original homestead family homestead home. Yeah, I never got to meet her. She died before I was born. And so, but my father, as a kid, remembers her taking this very basket, filling it with eggs, and walking to town with her basket full of eggs so that she could barter her eggs for other things that she may need, like sugar or flour. So anyway, this is one of like the coolest things. It's really probably the only thing, honestly, that I've ever inherited, I guess, which is kind of funny. But so I keep these little fake eggs in it. I keep it in my kitchen, up out of the way, because I really don't want it to get damaged. But you know, by all intents and purposes, this basket could be almost 100 years old, which is pretty impressive. It's really cool. And he remembers her gathering eggs in this in the 50s. And it appears to be even older than that. But I have actually gathered eggs in this just in memory of her. Actually, when I lived back on the original homestead house that this basket came from, was actually right next door to the barn where my chickens were, and it was pretty cool. I gotta admit, it was really cool to get to go gather eggs in the very basket that was held in the hands of a great grandmother that I've never even met. Like, I don't know her. I have since then kind of attempted to go on like this journey to try to find out a little bit more about her, because actually my family isn't really a family that shares a lot about heritage or ancestry or anything like that, other than the few little stories that I would catch here and there. So I really didn't know a whole lot about her. So I've been out on a mission the last year or so to try to learn more about her, who she was, where she was from. But anyway, so it means a lot to me to know that that I have this, and to think back on what it must have been like, you know, to go gather eggs just to barter for sugar. And I'm really intrigued by that. And the few stories that I've heard of her were that she was always up super early, that she cooked on an old wood cook stove, and that she would get up, start the fire, start what she needed to for breakfast, and then while her breakfast stuff was getting started, she would go out, milk her cow, and then come back in, finish breakfast, and then she would go out and work in the fields right next to my great-grandfather. Until lunchtime, that she would take a break, come in and make lunch for everyone. and then she would go back out and work in the fields and do all of her evening chores as well. And anyway, so this is like one of the coolest things that I own. I wanted to share that with you too. And I just wanted to remind you guys that we all have, bees are crazy around here. These bees are all over me. I want to remind you guys that we're all leaving a legacy. There's no way that this woman knew that, 75-ish years later, that her great-granddaughter would still be, of all the possessions that she owned in life and probably thought that were amazing and grand and dear to her, they were so poor. I'm sure that she had something though that she found to be, if you'd ask her, more valuable than that old egg basket. But the one thing that people have left, and this may be one of the only things of hers that is left, is an egg basket. That's what she's remembered by. To me, as a great-grandmother, the only thing I know her by, and her character by, for the most part, is this old egg basket. So I want to remind you guys not to get too caught up in trying to do all the big things because you think that that's what you're going to be remembered by. But remember, a lot of times it's the sum of all the little things that we are doing in life, and it's more often than not, probably going to be something that you would never imagine that you leave behind is going to be what you are remembered for, or what piques the curiosity of your great-grandchildren one day, or whoever goes on after you. I'm sure my grandfather, being a pastor and having college degrees and all the things, being a Marine, you would have thought he'd be remembered for being a Marine, or being a preacher, a pastor, and while I do appreciate, respect, and remember all those things, I grow tomatoes in honor of him. Jesse's grandmother was an amazing woman with amazing abilities, but when I think of her, I think of giant sunflowers. My great-grandmother, I'm sure, was a woman with many, many different layers to her personality, but the only thing that I'll ever know her by is this old basket. And it reminds me that all the wealth in the world, all the knowledge in the world, all the success in the world, all those things are wonderful, but they may not be the actual legacy that you leave behind. So make sure that make sure what you're leaving behind is going to be worthwhile and good. You guys have a good day. Bye.